Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O you who are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. A word to the warning, there are enough object lessons in tonight's sermon to sink a battleship, so be ready. The first object lesson I probably have is a little shopping I had to do this week with my kids coming for spring break. Yes, they're here just playing on handheld devices, probably in the youth room. You had to travel 300 miles and go to 2 churches, you'd probably be out there too. What I had to go buy were some rechargeable batteries. I, in my move, had just got regular batteries and realized I probably wasn't going to be too planet-friendly this week with the controllers running out of battery. So went and bought a couple of rechargeable batteries with a charger. Didn't have a charger before. The batteries I have are nickel metal hydroxide batteries, NiMH. Most of us know those well, but several of us can remember the first rechargeable battery for a handheld device, NiCads. You probably had the charger for the NiCads with you, because if you had a device that you'd like to turn up the volume, the NiCads would wear down in just a few hours if you weren't careful. The nickel metal hydroxide batteries are a lot longer in length. But even that type of a battery wouldn't last, especially when we found cellular phones that we could turn into little computers, like I have here, this wonderful little US cellular phone. No, this one has to have the next level of battery, the lithium-ion battery, and in some cases a lithium-ion polymer battery, which gives it a little bit more pliability and workability. And if you don't have data on your phone, some of you don't, those new batteries, according to my son, he's got one, no data for the 12-year-old yet, thank goodness, they last for weeks until they run out of battery if you don't use them. He's turned it on a week and a half later and go, oh, it still works. If you have data, you know what happens. You end up on the charger all the time. And while this is all wonderful to get rechargeable power for our devices, I always wonder about, what about us? Well, don't worry, because you live in the United States. And if we've got power supplies that are rechargeable, we've got products for you to recharge you. My favorite is this one. What, you didn't think I'd bring props? Of course. The Diet Coke. I live. There must be an intravenous Diet Coke that goes through my veins every Sunday or any time I've got long travel. But if you're a little bit more and you need a little more jolt, oh, the American consumer has been offered something else. Sadly, this has been consumed today. The Monster. The Monster. More caffeine than this by far and away, and a lot more sugar. To be precise on this can, 48 grams of sugar in one can. But there's the other element that's in here called taurine, which is extremely bitter, as are the B vitamins. And you know that bitter taste and have tasted it before without the sugar, because I've got the mother of all energy drinks, this little guy. Notice it has not been drank, because those of you who had to do one, I did one once, traveling 700 miles from the National Youth Event a few years ago. It's the kind of thing you really shouldn't be ingesting at all. You want to spit it back out. It's so horrible tasting. They all are. Maybe you get used to them, but the rush of B vitamins, taurine, caffeine, who needs coffee or tea, which used to be the vice or the choice for energy for people years ago. Just more coffee, I'll stay up. Oh no, we've got these, only a few calories, 4 to be exact, and you don't have to have the 48 grams of sugar in the Monster. For teens, this is an exciting drink to have. This is how we stay energized with the drinks. And you've watched me at dinner on Sunday night. Every now and then, have monsters. We threw most of this out. We found it so distasteful. Now, that was us personally. But there are a lot of ways to stay charged. You know, there are even foods that claim to charge you up, right? The superfoods full of B vitamins and energy that we can take. And we're looking for ways to get them faster and newer. You watch the NutriBullet commercials. This will energize you and it turns into the green shake. I have not done these, but people say they're very good and very energizing. I still remember the film L.A. Story, where Steve Martin had to drink some kind of green thing, and he said it tastes like licking a shag carpet. I thought that was a great image there. But again, it's supposed to be energizing for you. Even times where I myself have tried the product Slim Fast, I find I've got a lot more energy. Then I read the packaging and see all of the B vitamins that's supposed to boost your metabolism while starving you to death. No wonder you lose weight with this. It's a great program. You've got exercise programs out there that do it right. You're supposed to have more energy when you get done with P90X. As you can tell, I'm not doing P90X right now, but this is what the users of the program claim. More energy, renewed strength. Oh, this is what we want. Well, our story today is a story that's well known. It's very dense. It's very difficult at times to understand. We know it well because with all the sporting events going on, there'll be a sign that says John 3:16, for God so loved the world. You know it, yeah, very well. I had to memorize it very quickly in seminary. A lot of my more evangelical colleagues knew it well and felt that I needed to be accustomed to this. But this is a difficult passage, especially the first part of it. A very smart and learned man, Nicodemus, comes to Jesus by the cover of night. That image of darkness is important. Nicodemus is struggling. He must be. A learned, scholarly person coming to just somebody who he hears about? Nobody in the religious establishment at all? He must have some question or concern. He's not going to turn Jesus in. Rather, just wants to ask some questions. So that cover of darkness is important to protect himself and because he's sort of in the dark when it comes to his own knowledge in spite of all that he knows. What he gets in response is this very challenging passage. There are two ways you can interpret what is said primarily. And it's this idea of being born again. With Cathedral of Hope, I've learned the last 2 years, a few of you have just inwardly cheered with that phrase, and several of you have inwardly cringed with that phrase, depending on what side of the equation you're on. Well, I'm not going to get too much into it today, because there's another translation. It's a translation that you heard David say tonight. That you must be born from above. Wait, again, above? That's different. What's going on here? What's going on is a complex Greek term. Ancient Greek terms are tough because they don't necessarily have one corresponding English word anywhere else. You sort through other things, and John's Greek is much more complex than the other Gospels. So we're left with a great debate among scholars. But this idea of either being born anew, again, or from above is there. You need to be born differently than when you're born from the womb. How so? And how does it need to happen? Clearly how it needs to happen, regardless of our phrasing there, is it must happen in a spiritual sense. So all of this stuff is out. We don't need to have physically new bodies. We don't have to have physically more energy. Rather, this rebirth has to come on some other level than the physical level. We're not going to be mentally sharper. Rather, something's going to happen to us in a spiritual sense. I had a professor professor in seminary who really worked hard on one piece. And my friend Bud Hartley looked at this and said, I believe it's a call not just to be born again or anew once, but a continual need for spiritual rebirth. I was always amazed in my career of churches that had been born out of the revival movement, and a revivalist or evangelist would go to the church again. And I would say, why does a church that was born out of revival need revival? And they would point to this passage. And they would say, just because our people receive Christ once does not mean that they don't need a refresher course. They very well may. In fact, many times do. So it's good to have that person again. Because once we have a spiritual encounter or experience, we're going to need to be reminded and supported with that experience. That was always my argument with especially young evangelicals. They had found Christ once, usually in college. They had gone to an InterVarsity meeting or a college community, and they said, wow, I never knew about this faith called Christianity. I never knew there was a spiritual part to myself at all. What a great discovery. And I would say to them, so when are you going to discover it again? Oh, I don't need to discover it again. I look at them and say, yeah, you do. Sure you do. You're going to have questions beyond that first experience, and you need something else. Evangelist Billy Graham, I got to encounter his ministry early on in mine in upstate New York. There was one of his crusades. Some of you are old enough to remember the Billy Graham crusades that he would have. And at the end of it, he would always encourage people to do one thing. Find a local congregation and go. He was never one to want people to follow his ministry, but find a local church. I don't think that's true sometimes with some evangelists today, but with Billy it was. Because there was something, I believe, that he knew. That the spiritual journey was just that, a journey. It wasn't a 1 moment or a 5-minute experience. It was a lifetime experience, full of highs and lows, and a necessity to be born from above, to have that spiritual recharge that we so desperately seek. All of us do. All of us have to find a moment where we find ourselves recharged. And what will that moment be? Will you have one today? Maybe not. Mine as a youth were always outdoor ministry experiences, always camp experiences. Maybe a camp defender to this day. Get done with the high of a week of church camp and come back a different person. Spiritually connected to my Creator, to the outdoors, to those of a similar faith around me, very much a mountaintop. My father said, you were just a different guy for several weeks after that. But it would fade, and I would need to go back again to the mountaintop to receive that. We cannot bottle spiritual renewal, although we try. We can't guarantee spiritual renewal in one worship. We can't guarantee, as John Wesley would say, that strangely warmed experience each week or in each element of worship. Yet the moments can come. And they should come not just tonight, but at any moment during the week. Even today, I found myself with a strangely warmed experience of the three of us taking one of the youth from the Drummond church, there is only one actually, out to lunch. You know how we go to dinner, some of us? Well, they don't really do that up in Drummond. Well, we needed to see a woman who had fell in Enid and decided that that would be a good time, almost to kind of have a spontaneous event. We're lucky. We get to have those spontaneous moments with each other all week long, where we see each other and all of a sudden we know this person and that person, and it lifts us up and recharges us. I would challenge us this Lent not to look for recharging and energy here or in some kind of plug where we can plug our phone into, but inside. Finding our inner strength and inner joy with God and faith to be able to recharge us, as we need more energy that can only come from above.